The following is from the Agency for Instructional Technology, AIT.
An artist has many techniques for showing depth and distance in a picture. In this program, Paul will explain the technique of linear perspective, which is a mechanical and geometric method of creating the illusion of depth on your flat piece of drawing paper or painting canvas.
Now this is a rough sketch to get started with ideas. Now if we look at this railroad track, the rails are, say, 7 or 8 feet apart here. And we know if we walked down that track and measured them way off here in the distance, they'd still be 7 or 8 feet apart. But it doesn't appear that way to the eye. So in drawing, we draw things as they appear, not necessarily as they are. The same way with the telephone poles. You see, they seem to get smaller and go off into a point here. Now in drawing this, it's very easy because I have a system, a method. We call it perspective. In this case, one-point perspective. After I decide what I want to draw, my front lines are always straight. The wall surface that faces me is straight. But all other lines are predictable and go to a point. It makes it very easy. It's something you can learn. Now back to our sketch. Let's see what happened here. How perspective helped me decide. I'll put a little part of a roof here and add something in the front wall which has no perspective to it, but to show you. I started off with an eye level, sometimes called the horizon line, and you can still see the eye level here. That's very important. That's probably the first step in drawing a perspective or in drawing. We determine where the eye is viewing and at what level. Now my eye is at this level. Then as I come along the eye level, I must determine a center line of vision. And you can see a faint line here that I left to show you. So along this eye level, my eyes are at this level and they stop at this point. That's called a focal point there. And here's the center line of vision. Now I know the level of my eye and the point on the eye level which all lines will be drawn from. All lateral lines will recede to this point. And you see the side of the building went that way. You see the railroad tracks come to that point. I determine how wide I want this, or how wide I want anything on here. But once I determine that, then we have one point to go to in a one-point perspective. And all these lateral lines will go down to that point, not the front lines. And if I add something here, it could be a box or another house, the front part of it has no perspective to it. It's only the lateral sides. Now I know the height of it and I know the points it's to go to. So I would draw down here and cut this off straight. These front lines have no perspective, but the lateral lines would. And if I had a shed or a building or a small building here, we can keep adding to this, remembering that the front wall, the front sides have no perspective, but the lateral sides, all lines on these will go to this one point. So that's not hard to lay out a one-point perspective. Linear perspective. Linear meaning line. Lines in perspective. Perspective is a tool of the artist, and perspective is a science. It's a science because in the perspective, all lines are measurable and predictable. Here we have the oldest surviving painting of the use of one-point perspective, The Last Supper, painted by Leonardo da Vinci. If you notice, the eye level is about at the center of Christ's face, And behind the head you can see the horizon line. And then the focal point is at Christ's head, and all lines at the top and below that eye level converge to that one focal point at Christ's head. Now let me draw a simple box using a one-point perspective. I start with my eye level, sometimes called horizon line, and here's my eye level. Now I want the box to be below that eye level, so that means I'll be looking down on the top of the box. So I'll determine my focal point. In other words, here's the level of my eye, here's where I stop my eye, and I want my object to be drawn below this point, because my eye level is here, and my focal point and center line of vision is right here. Now if I come down here and say, well, this is the top of the box here, and I sketch a line. Now this could be turned different ways, but here it's turned parallel to the eye level. And I want the box to be this wide. Then from that point, my line is predictable. I know that I'm going right to that point. And from this edge, I know I'm going right to that point. Now, the sides have no perspective. The sides of the box will be straight down. The vertical lines. And then, of course, the bottom here will be parallel. There is no perspective in this facing side. The perspective is in the lateral sides, in a one-point perspective. Now see, after I make my determination of how wide I want it, all the other lines, and if I want the box to be this long, or I could come out here or cut it here. Any place I'd cut it, but the sides would take us to here, and then here would be a box drawn in one-point perspective. You don't see the one point used as much as the 2 point. For one reason, I can only see the top and one side. We get into other perspectives, we show more views. And also, it becomes rather extreme. So sometimes in freehand perspective, we adjust the perspective, and that'll come later. Now let's move from a one-point perspective to a 2-point perspective. Now in a 2-point perspective, I start the same way I did as in 1 point. Now if I'm drawing a block or a building, this will be one side, and this will be the other side. And the center line of vision will divide those two. Now this is where the difference starts. In a 2-point perspective, we will have, instead of 1 point with all lines recede to, we'll have 2 points. A point on this side of the center line of vision and a point on this side of the center line of vision. And you can put those points wherever you choose. If you put the point, this vanishing point in close, you're going to have an extreme perspective. Or you can put it here, it'll be less. So you can move it out here. Let's say I put it here, because this is up to you. You decide where you want to put that, depending on the angle you want your block or building to be. Then I'm going to move out here, and I'm going to put another vanishing point here. Now I've pretty well set up the conditions per perspective. If I determine this is going to be the corner of a block, and how tall do I want that block to be? That's up to me. So I put a mark here, and I put a mark here, and then this becomes the corner of the block, the top and the bottom. Now as for the sides of the block, we know we're going to go from this point to this point, and from this point to this point on this side. So lightly, let me draw a line. Now if your paper's large enough, you can use a straight edge. But if you have small paper, you must just guess with it, or if you don't have a straight edge. But there's nothing, we've already determined with the points, so it's very easy to draw between the 2 points. Here This is the bottom up to here. Now I have the conditions of the perspective set up. I can determine how wide I want the building to be on this side, or how long I want it to extend on this side. Suppose I say I want the building to be about this wide. I put a mark there, and then I draw a line down, this other perspective line. And this line will be parallel to the center line of vision. There's no perspective in your vertical lines on a 2-point. Now, there are extreme cases of a tall building, as architects draw, and they will put another point way up there. But most of the things that we draw as artists will have no perspective to the vertical lines. And let's say that I want the side of the building to be this wide here. Then I will draw a vertical line. And this vertical line here then represents the faraway corner of the building. So I'll darken that. And here's my center corner of the building. And here is the other faraway corner of the building. And if I darken these lines, you can see that I have the construction of a block or a building or any object that is in this proportion. Now, for the top and the bottom, these lines are no longer needed. And I'll just lighten them to show you. Here's the eye level. Everything above this I'm looking up on. Everything below this I'm looking down on. Now, to help you, let's put a little shadow over here on this side and make it a little easier for you to see that this is drawn as a three-dimensional object. In a 2-point perspective, the eye level can run through the box here. And in this case, you can see the left side, you can see the right side, but you can't see the top or the bottom of the box. Now, on the upper box, the eye level is below. So you're looking up and you see the bottom of it, and you see the right side, and you see the left side. On the box at the lower part of our picture, the eye level is above, so we're looking down on it. We're seeing the top of the box, and we see the right of the box, and we see the left of the box. But regardless of the eye level, in a box this shape, you can never see the top and the bottom at the same time.
With a blank sheet of paper, draw a box in 2-point perspective. Now, turn that box into anything which has a similar shape, such as a package, a banquet table, a boat, or a house. As Paul works on his drawing of a stack of books, he uses the principles of 2-point perspective. By giving each book a different set of imaginary vanishing points, they are turned at varying angles to the viewer. While this drawing appears more complex, it relies on the basics of any perspective drawing: a horizon line or eye line, a center line, and vanishing points. Drawing a geometric shape so that it has the illusion of depth can be easy when you know the simple components of linear perspective. Drawing with Paul Ringler is produced by the Agency for Instructional Technology in association with the Oklahoma Educational Television Authority.